100% 5-star book. I loved it. There were so many feels, so many good feels about it. It exceeded my expectations. I found it on a sale table. I think it was at Lifeline Bookfest, and it was one of the best written books that I read in 2021. It is what I call modern science fiction because, it's very modern science fiction, published in 2018. It was intricately crafted, beautifully written. The plot was rich and complex. The characters were great. The world building was fantastic. So again, I love any sort of science fiction dystopia or anything that's based on a marine type theory, and that fits it completely. So there were climate wars. The sea level, I think, has risen a fair bit. This is a floating city, and it's floating in the Arctic. It's called Qaanaaq. I think it's called Qaanaaq. It's Qaanaaq. That sounds rather Canadian First Nations. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm almost certainly pronouncing it wrong. Correct me. It's a wonderful literary construct. The description of the different arms and social structures of it are magnificent. It sounds as complex, as real, as strong, as good and nasty as any real city. It floats in the Arctic Circle, like I said, east of Greenland, north of Iceland, and it's survived major world upheavals. So the sea level has risen, there have been major wars throughout the globe, the movements of displaced people throughout the world have created displaced migrant culture in anywhere that has survived, and here it sort of clashes and combines and becomes quite fascinating. The cultures and the mythology of the social group are very much part of the plot, as well as the background. So the story starts with a storytelling sort of mythological field sequence in which a woman comes to the city with a blackfish, which in this context at least is an orca, and a polar bear. This mythological sequence becomes more and more relevant as you go through, and it catalyzes behavior in people in the city. I'm not going to talk too much about the actual plot because I think that anyone who's interested enough to have clicked on this link should just read this book. It's fabulous. Now, the catalyst of the woman, the orca, and the polar bear creates the story, and are going into it through several different layers with lots of main characters and lots of different levels of the actual society. So we see the city from many different levels, and we start with Phil, or he's one of the early ones. Anyone, that's Phil with an F. He comes from one of the wealthiest classes. He doesn't do anything very much except party, and his very active sex life has meant that he's contracted an infectious, invariable, fatal disease known as the breaks. The breaks are a major part of the plot line as well. It's a poorly understood disease, no cure, huge amount of social stigma, and it's used here as a very good way to learn about the city. We also have Ankit, a single political worker, Kaev, who is a professional fighter. I really loved Kaev's story arc. He's an amazing fighter, we're told, and we're actually shown very well. Miller doesn't do the tell not show style of writing. All of his writing shows you from inside the actual story the things that he's telling you about people. So Kaev is a great fighter, but he's never people's choice. So he gets paid to lose on fights where he could actually really quite easily win against fighters who are people's favourites, and so they're basically fixed fights so that the favourite wins. And then we have Sock. Sock is also an early on character. Sock is a sideway messenger, and the sideway messenger was interesting. They do it on something that sounds like a combination of rollerblades and a maglev getting together and having a future baby. I really like the description of how Sock gets around and the city from Sock's point of view, which is much more street level based than the previous ones. Sock does not identify as either binary gender and was really well written in that context. It took me a while to realise there was a non-binary character. So for people who like books with non-binary character, this one is for you. All these characters slowly come together and build a montage of the city from all these different sources. It's excellently conceived book. I actually think I'm probably about to read it again. I've talked myself into it. I don't want to talk too much about the plot. Like I said, it's elaborate, and I mean, for me, well, the plot was brilliant and the ending was very, very satisfying. It was almost secondary to the world building because I loved the world so much. I wanted to hear more about the city. I wanted to immerse myself in more stories that happen in it. I can't find that Sam J. Miller wrote any other books in this particular city, but I hope he does one day and that I find them. Thoroughly recommended. All the good things, like, comment, subscribe, says YouTube.